Hey Taj, how you doing?
Doing good, Rajiv. Thanks. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. It's been a while, and I'm sure we have a lot to catch up on here. Excited to hear all about the great developments that I'm sure you've been undertaking in the last year since year plus actually, since we last talked. I know that you guys landed a big investment recently, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. We got our Series Seed round. It was oversubscribed, a 3 million round, and it's nice to get investors to line up and see the vision of what we're doing here at LeaseCake. So,
That is awesome. Congratulations on that.
thank you.
All right. Well, I think you know the kind of broad strokes of what we're doing here. 2M2X is 2 minutes to digital transformation, where we are primarily talking to C-level people, CIOs, CTOs, CEOs of reasonable sized companies that have a non-digital business but are looking to do digital transformation. So, I mean, you're not in that bucket. You were a digital native from day one, but I think your story is very exciting and something that I think digital transformation or people that are engaged in digital transformation can learn a lot from, especially with how you went about doing your customer discovery, responding to what your market was telling you, and then evolving your digital products along the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is great content for our audience. And before I go too far, I should probably introduce who you are, and then I'll let you go into more detailed introduction with that. So, Taj Adhav, you are the founder and CEO at LeaseCake. Uh, Prior to that, you were an executive at Channel Intelligence, which was purchased by Google. So you've been part of a big exit in the past, and now you've launched your own startup here. We're very excited to have you. Go ahead, Taj. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not as young as you would think. So, you may call me a digital native, but I was a CPA for 15 years. Worked in Big Four accounting. Was an Imagineer at Disney for a decade. Uh,
Wow, see, I didn't know all of that.
yeah, responsible for a couple $1 billion in commercial real estate projects, and helped. You joined as an early hire at Channel Intelligence, and what you mentioned. It was a 12, 13-year journey, exit to Google. So I think digital transformation is obviously it's something that everyone should understand and embrace. And whether you're old school, new school, digital native, or digital immigrant, I think one of the reasons that we created LeaseCake, I think it's really kind of the stories that you put together throughout your life, right? I feel like I've been training for this all my life. So, end of the day, people buy products from people that they like, right? So it's understand trust and empathy. But I think and we'll touch on this, really dive into greater detail. But um, understanding what the customer's needs are and listening to the customer, asking them serious questions, finding out what their pain points are. I think ultimately that's how successful businesses are created, and I think frankly how successful business and products are developed. Right, the more you ask your customers, they will tell you what to build, and they will tell you how much they'll pay for it. So
Absolutely.
that's absolutely part and parcel of why when we launched LeaseCake, you'll remember this 3.5 years ago at a Techstars Global Startup Weekend, I was reluctant to even pitch the idea of a lease management solution made easy. All right, it's a simple name called LeaseCake, right?
Right.
And it did start from asking questions. One of the guys that I had met with, he ended up being my co-founder, and it was a conversation probably about 5 years ago, Rajiv, at a diner here in Winter Park over a cup of coffee. And he was managing this $50 million commercial real estate portfolio. Probably not a digital native, but certainly smart enough to use Excel and Dropbox and Google and DocuSign. But he was faced with a problem of losing track of lease expirations and rent increases and renewal options for his tenants. So
Right.
as I was enjoying this nice cup of coffee with a really great guy, and again he ended up being our co-founder, I said, Jim, I can't believe nothing like this exists. It's, it's dates and dollars and reminders. Everybody in business owns or leases commercial real estate, right? Where's the app for that? Like, why doesn't this exist? So, it's really about trying to find out and ask those kinds of questions. It's like, why isn't there an easier way? What can I do to take something that sucks and make it not suck? But the journey of finding, other potential competing solutions. Why isn't Dropbox good enough? Why isn't Excel good enough? Why aren't calendar alerts good enough? And that, frankly, is the reason that we created LeaseCake. So at that Techstars event, that you'll remember, this multi-country simultaneous build a company in a 54-hour weekend.
Oh, I remember it very well. You were actually the startup weekend that you did, where you participated, was the first one that I was organizing.
Yeah.
That was 2016 or 17?
2017.
17, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the first one, and you guys won, and you also won the global championship in 150 cities, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right. But I think, going back to, whether you're a digital native or whether you're just innately curious, which I certainly am, it's like I wanted to understand what the pain points were, and I got caught up in that pitch night, right? I was there. You invited me to be a mentor over the weekend and just kind of help other budding entrepreneurs with whatever, pearls of wisdom that I could share. But as I looked at that Friday night, I said, maybe I'll do a pitch. And I asked Jim, who was the guy that I met with over a cup of coffee, I said, if I get the guts to do this, what do you think? He's like, absolutely, go for it. So that was the beginning of creating LeaseCake. But it was not because I'm a digital native, not because I believe that, oh my gosh, technology can solve everything. Geez, why don't people try harder? It really comes down to the questions that you ask. So, to make sure you establish trust with your customer, make sure you're empathetic with their needs and you listen. And that brings in that ultimate curiosity, the TEC that I like to call it.
Yep. And if I remember correctly, you had the largest team. And I think I mean, no offense to you, it wasn't just the charisma, but it was the empathy. I mean, you really came across as somebody who cared about solving a problem, and people just gravitated to it because they felt like you were someone that would take this in a structured way as far as you could take it. And I think that sense just came through, probably because of all the background that you just shared. And that really put you up there as, hey, everybody wants to join this team because this one seems like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I think going back to my days at Disney, I mean, this was in the 90s, and I was a pretty young buck, but Disney was not really a technology really digital native company. They absolutely certainly are today. So just imagine that transformation that they were going through, and I saw that, right? And they did an amazing job of really understanding their customers, what their habits were, vacation patterns, their desires, their dreams, and where they wanted to be. All of that kind of became part of the fabric of who I am. It's like, just, we've got to make something that's amazing, right? Build something with purpose, whether it's a great destination, a great movie, theme park ride, resort, or technology. And I think that listening and making sure that you always ask your customers. You never ever take them for granted. You never assume that they're going to come back and renew the software subscription, and having that belief, not just at the CEO level, but trying to instill it across the C-suite, but then all the way on down throughout the organization. I've always believed that, as I said this, the customer is always right, or the customer should be listened to, and you should have a process to do so throughout your company. So we try to, at LeaseCake, make sure that everyone in the company has an opportunity to be a part of a phone call, whether it's a post-sale customer success conversation, a new feature release, or upcoming roadmap conversation. It's absolutely essential to not.
I love that. I just wanted to double down and underline that point because that is so critical. Creating that customer awareness, even if it's not like you're not even in a customer facing role, but just having that awareness of what customers are asking for and how we're solving those problems really, helps you in so many ways to make the right decisions, whether you're writing code and you're never going to be in front of a customer, or if you're going to be doing something else that is unrelated to customers. But you're at the end, you're part of that value chain, right? And that's really your point here. And I love that you're bringing people in that aren't really directly connected to customers. I hope our audience takes that away as one of the learnings here.
Yeah, and it solves a bunch of things simultaneously. One is it puts in perspective what the team is building, right? They may never, in any other organization, they may never even talk to a customer, right? They might see, 4 stars on a review, or it's like, oh my gosh, wait, we've got 1,000 reviews. This is great. But one is, understand what purpose you are doing this for. You are doing this for your customer. It doesn't matter what kind they are. SMB, enterprise, consumer packaged goods. It can be anything. So one is making sure that people understand their involvement. The second, I think that's the most overlooked, is having your customers really understand that you genuinely, and you have to do this genuinely, that you genuinely care, and having different team members involved in a structured meeting, a quick 30 minutes. It's not to mine a bunch of information from your customers, but just say, hey, this is our quarterly check-in call, or we're starting a new program. We wanted to introduce you a few of our team members. It really shows the customer that you are listening and that you do have a solid team that is really trying to understand the pain points or the successes and how to make those customers more successful. But then the thing that you can't measure, and it's more of a softer skill, you start to instill more empathy across your entire team. And that's what I was mentioning earlier, right? You can have a leadership team that's like, we're all about empathy. But if you don't really build that culture of knowledge and trust, empathy, and curiosity early, then it's really hard to change the course. So, but not say that it can't be done over the course of a year or so. But if you were to snap your fingers, give it some time, and really put some thought into changing your organization from being, digitally junior, digitally naive, to a truly digital, forward-thinking, customer-first, customer-facing organization, your customers will love you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I take it, Taj, you're still showing up to these customer conversations too?
Yeah. So we've grown. So we had about 4.5 people in the company for about 3 years, 4.5 full-time equivalents. Today we have about 20. Maybe it's about 15 FTEs right now. So we've almost quadrupled. What we've done as we've scaled, again, really instilling customer-facing, customer-first, very a whole feedback loop across our team. We created an ambassador program. Now, this is our internal terminology, but how do you score your customers, right? From unengaged, happy, they're using your service or product. They probably don't need a ton of maintenance. They may not want to hear from you, but there are others that say, wow, really cool if you did this, really cool if you did that. Well, some companies believe that, geez, I'm tired of trying to make all of our customers happy. And those are the most annoying questions. I wish you could do this. I wish you could do that. Why can't they be like everyone else? Well, the thing is, those are where the biggest opportunities are, because you can, if you rally your team around them, not necessarily create one-off solutions to make everyone happy, but try to find the commonalities, then they ultimately become your most lethal sales weapon, right? They can then become an ambassador. So we kind of look at those 4 stages, right? Where they're more passive, or they don't need a lot of hand holding, or they ask a lot of questions and, hey, when can you do this? Geez, this is broken, or this could be improved upon. Or then the ambassador, looking at that entire life cycle. We think that the ones that have the potential of being that ambassador are the greatest asset for our company, because they're always willing to jump on a phone call. I'm, not all the time being the leader of that call, but I'm certainly on calls where there's some really great substance with a broader group of team members. But
Yeah.
the ambassador call, that category, if you will, and we've got a very high net promoter score. It's about 82, 83 right now. And for an enterprise business to business application, that just means that, most of our customers would absolutely recommend us to any business or business person or colleague that they have. So it's just a great kind of benchmark. But for us, an ambassador should be, if anybody wants to get a reference, you shouldn't have to ask for permission. They would call that customer and, unequivocally say, oh my gosh, Informulate is amazing, or LeaseCake is amazing. I love that team. So that's really, we try to put our customers on that life cycle, and how do we get more and more of them to be that infectious, raving fan of your product. So I think, end of the day, it's about customers, right? It has nothing to do with technology or not. It's just making sure.
That's another point that I want to make sure we really underline, is because in lean startup world, there's the Japanese phrase, I'm going to probably murder the pronunciation here, but Genchi Genbutsu, which is go see for yourself. Because, a lot of organizations, and especially for non-digital organizations that have grown to a certain size, there's so many layers now, right? And that's what makes digital transformation so hard for them, which it wasn't that much of a problem for you, but you're doing all the right things in terms of building that culture early. So as you scale, that culture scales with it. But it's especially hard if you didn't start that way and now you're trying to change the culture. And I think the leadership that you're showing there is kind of what the C-level folks and others need to hear, is that just like Steve Jobs, right? He used to pick up the phone and answer call center calls because he wants to hear from the voice of the customer. And there was this Toyota executive who basically went to a Toyota store and then hung around the store, and then he actually took a ride home with a family that just bought a Toyota, and because he wanted to understand what that car buying experience was like for them. So I mean, if you really are serious about being customer facing, then those are the things you have to do and build, and you have to lead from the front to make sure that that culture starts with you and spreads outward. So that is such a critical point. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. I mean, when we come across this every day, even, across our customer base, some of our customers have thousands of employees, maybe 80 to 100 locations. They're making, 50, 100 million bucks a year. And they have embraced different technologies that have put things together for everyone to be operating very efficiently, from a guest experience perspective, from a preparation perspective. But if you swing the pendulum all the way to, let's say, Fortune 100 companies, right? Old school construction companies, automotive dealerships, when it comes down to lease and location management, boutique retail stores, physical therapy, medical retail operators, everyone's doing more with less. And you have to make sure that you build the right thing to solve the pain points that they're going through. And a lot of times, software that was built, perfect for the time in the mid 80s or the early 90s is still operating today, but they do nothing to solve the real world problems that people are faced with in today's world. I mean, just if you look at why is Siri and all of these instant response type of solutions providing quick answers. End of the day, it doesn't matter what kind of company you are, large or small, you want to have fast answers, right? You could be at your kid's soccer game, you could be at a bar with friends, you could be playing golf, you could have been having dinner with your wife, and end of the day, you want quick answers. So you can't just rely on, well, geez, we've got software, we're absolutely embracing technology. Well, it doesn't work the way that your teams work or the way that your customers work. It's time for a change.
Right.
So we've got Fortune 100 companies, we've got construction, we've got a very large, retail boutique came on board, a large salon franchisor using us across their entire enterprise.
Yeah,
There's
that's a good one, Taj. If you don't mind me diving into that piece a little bit, like, tell us a little bit about how much has your original vision changed over time? Because as you just mentioned, everything evolves, and you've looked at different customer segments. So did you have to do any significant pivots, or is your original vision kind of still holding true?
I'd say the vision is holding true. Some of the execution early on has altered somewhat. So as I mentioned, that over a cup of coffee story, we looked at building out LeaseCake to solve a problem that was pervasive in the landlord space, right? If you own a building or own several buildings, you have many tenants. But the fabric of my pitch was really about, hey, if everybody in business owns or leases commercial real estate, where's the app for that? So I knew that there was a tenant need as well, because there's always two parties to a lease last time I checked. And and having that kind of transparent system where if you build a platform that serves two needs simultaneously, you're really serving the value prop that each one needs independently. So that always was part of what we were building. But as we socialize the application with more and more landlords, more and more people really generally in business, they would say, man, I'd buy LeaseCake and here's five more people to talk to. That's what started to happen. But um, as we increased our velocity, we segmented that audience and we found that on the tenant side, right? These are business operators that have either 10 locations or 100 or 300 locations. They say, man, I need LeaseCake as much as the rich landlord. And so we asked kind of why? Well, because they need to keep track of all those lease events, renewal options, and things that they miss. Very punitive when you start to lose track of those locations, because that's your bread and butter. Your business is that location, right? Whether it's retail or office or industrial, like you've invested a lot in making sure that you run lean and mean out of that space. And if you miss a date, it's absolutely devastating. It's certainly huge financial consequences. But then there's more and more things that they started to use LeaseCake for outside of real estate. So yeah, both sides are being served. But to answer your question about the segments, what I love about how flexible it is and how I don't say if there's a ubiquity of need, but there's a very common need. And the common need, you could either be a franchisee, a franchisor, a corporate multi-unit operator, right? Nothing to do with franchising. You could be a private equity company or a tenant rep broker. Ultimately, all of those needs that I mentioned, you know, proactive organization and notifications and keeping everything into one system for it, mobile, tablet, or desktop, it's everybody needs the same thing. So it's back to how do you build a consumer-centric application that demands to be on the home screen of everyone's phones, because how they need information is very much independent of what they're doing. They don't have to come to the office. They need to have all the info kind of like right here. That's kind of how enterprise applications should be. Right. And it's a fascinating use case that really can be cloned across multiple areas.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. And you mentioned the customer focus part of it, but are there any other tools and methodologies that you applied that helped you not just hear the voice of the customer, but convert that into actual value propositions that are delivered in a timely way and time to market, like Agile or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think having your customers or starting to organize what their needs are into buckets, right? And buckets of very common types of features, and laying them out into a roadmap that makes sense, that you can start to deploy and deliver on. So yeah, absolutely. The methodologies are, we're agile. We have a sprint process, and all of our development team, and it can be applied to anything, right? It's like how much time or resources does a single developer have? Does a single marketer have? Does a single customer success person have? How much can they process through in a given day or a given week? So our agile process is really breaking down those features and the success metrics into chunks and involving the customers into saying, okay, listen, this is really important, but until we have 80% of our customers needing something, we'll probably be pushing this out in our winter release. But these features are going to be rolled out in the summer release. So breaking down these tasks, again, whether they're software related, whether customer success related, whether product management related, or marketing, it's really important to have those kind of components and put a timeline against it, because that's how you break down, right? It's about leadership, making sure that every team knows what they're working on and where they fit in the spectrum, and then obviously what is the customer need that is driving that use case. So every 2 weeks we have a sprint. We got a very in-depth process to get those items ticketed and workflowed in. Not to get too much into individual tool sets, but obviously use the Atlassian tool sets of Jira and Confluence. So many different kind of project management tools that's worked very effectively for us. Email platforms that everyone, I think, typically, irrespective of size, probably uses, like Constant Contact or Mailchimp, etc. All those kinds of tools, but bringing them together into some CRM system. So there's Salesforce's CRM system, there's HubSpot, making sure there's kind of one digital dashboard for the entire company, I think is also.
Gotcha. And how do you think about metrics? Do you have some key metrics that you've looked at and derived from all your customer conversations? Like, hey, these are the things that we're going to monitor on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis?
Yes, absolutely. You have to be metrics driven because you can't manage what you don't measure. So some of the metrics, just as an example, are engagement. How often are they in the application? How many documents have they uploaded? How many leases do they upload? How many team members do they invite? What's the average number of team members per customer? So, come up with what you think are the absolute measures of success, and specific, not just your own, the company's personal revenue success, but what's the likelihood that that customer's going to stay with you, right? So being, embracing digital solutions and knowing what those metrics are really important, because you can't ever assume, especially today, lots of different choices out there. Customers can abandon you, right? Customers can churn, and suddenly, if you don't pay attention to them the right way, then they go, oh, I found another lawn care company. I found another marketing agency. I found another plumber. So making sure that you look at those metrics for customer engagement, making sure that they're always aware of your product and your service, and not just to contact them to sell them things, but truly take care of them and give them other, other value adds, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell me about some of the scary times. What were some of the challenges you faced that you had to kind of like, oh crap, I don't know what's going to happen next, kind of situations that you had to overcome, and how you went about addressing those?
So there were lots of them, right? It's like, what are the things that keep you up at night? Two things. There's good things that keep you up at night, but there's also the scary things. And that's what drives me, is just like, we just got this furious, sense of urgency in the company. But the scary times are, you have to make a decision, and it's hard to make a call and say, okay, are we ready to go to market? And from day one, we were in the market, right? From that Techstars event, we had a prototype, more and more customers were using it. But the scary time was, what's the point where we just give it away, or do we start charging? Are we before our time? And is it going to take too long to educate our customers that, hey, there's a better way? And through that education, it becomes a really long sales cycle just to get maybe, I would say, $500 a year, right? So, I think the scary times were definitely in that first year. It's, are we a volume play? Get more and more customers, just give it away for free? Or, should we really take our time and understand the sales cycle and charge people? These aren't our numbers, $10,000 a month or whatever, right? And obviously that's a huge long sales cycle. That isn't our pricing, but we have to come back to kind of what is an easy pricing, friction free, so they can make a fast decision, especially in this, in this age of instantaneous gratification. So the first year was tough. The second year was, celebrating our first $500 a year customer. So it was, and I know you look back at that and I go, oh my gosh, now, we've signed up some pretty amazing national and international brands, and it's almost like we don't blink. But I still have sleepless nights ahead of us, ahead of me, Raji, for sure. Because there's challenges that are lurking around the corner. But what you have to do is always hire people smarter than yourself, and that's how I've certainly scaled. And I think you got to trust and empower them. So you get that, you have some sleepless nights, but chances are they'll come back to you with answers in the morning. They'll say, this is what we should do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess we're getting close to time here, but I have two more things. Well, one is any kind of lessons learned that you'd like to share. You shared a few already with the customer discovery and Agile and tools. Anything else that you can think of from a lessons learned perspective?
Absolutely. So I think, any company that's transitioning or thinking about transition to be, more embracing of technologies, don't think you have to come up with your ideas in a silo or in a vacuum. You could be a COO, a CIO, CTO, and just say, oh my gosh, this is absolutely what we need to do. Let's go ahead and do this. Let me build a team. We're going to focus on this and get it rolling. Ideas are better when shared. And just be really, really careful when you think you've got the best idea and all you need to do is rally the team around it. Don't fool yourself in thinking that your team doesn't have better ideas or ideas to make yours better. So just like LeaseCake, right? LeaseCake is better when shared. Ideas are better when shared. And that's frankly what we found when we said, hey, we should build this. And the more people you bring to the table in that conversation, they say, we should build this, and we could do this, and we could do this. So that part of collaboration, I think, is going to be an essential part of any CIO, CTO making a transition. Involve your team, share it, embrace good ideas. Don't just shoot down good ideas or bad ideas. Over time, it will get better, and you'll have more success when rolling it out.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and any asks that you have for the community or for our listeners? You have any hiring needs? Do you have any things that you would ask for help for?
Yeah, I think in general, if anyone has multiple locations, whether you're a CIO, CTO, and you're trying to keep track of all the different things that are going on in the marketplace with your specific real estate, come see us, have a conversation. It's not a sales pitch, but it's certainly what we love to do is we love to learn. And our process is definitely an educational process. So come to leasecake.com and you'll see some potential areas that we could help transform your business. We're certainly hiring. We've got a development team that's growing all across the U.S. We don't have to be all here in Central Florida. So there's absolutely talent needs. So take a look at what we have at leasecake.com. Hopefully that helps, Reggie.
That is wonderful. Yeah. Thanks for that. And thank you so much for making some time, Taj. As I've mentioned before, and I've said it many times in the community, you and LeaseCake are absolutely the poster child for Startup Weekend as well, of course. An ex-corporate guy showing up in a startup event, meeting up with a bunch of startup folks, launching an idea, winning the evening as well as winning the global one, and then going out and building your team, and then now landing millions of dollars in funding. It's a fantastic journey, and it's very inspirational. And of course, you have already spoken at a few events about this for me and for others as well. And I think it's a great inspirational story. I did have one other question, actually, now that I think about it, which is around building your business in Orlando. So what do you see as kind of the pros and cons of building in Orlando and things that worked for you or against you? And I guess where does your future take you? Are you going to stay in Orlando, continue, or are you thinking about moving somewhere?
Yeah, sure. A great question. I think certainly what COVID has shown is that you don't have to be in the tech hubs to succeed. Certainly companies can be very successful in a distributed way. So that's really kind of forced that conversation and issue. Orlando's been great to us. I think, certainly the Florida market, the flyover states from a technology perspective, there are great ideas and great tech companies all over the place. And certainly Florida is no exception. Orlando is no exception. We are, I think, blessed by great weather, great tech talent. A lot of people don't really understand the importance of Cape Canaveral and everything that was going on in Central Florida to support the Cape and the space program. But there's an amazing amount of really sharp, strong, talented people, loyal and affordable. There's nothing that's holding tech companies back from that standpoint. I think that was probably a question 10 years ago that people would ask and say, geez, it must be really hard to find talent. Why won't you move to, the Bay Area or the Valley or New York or Austin? Those days are gone. I think there's been very successful, startups that have had, multi-digit exits, and Miami's no exception. Orlando, we've had several, as well as the Tampa and North Florida, Jacksonville market. So really, really bullish on Central Florida. The diversification of its economy. The other half of Orlando, that's a story it's really important to be told. We're not a convention and tourism place. Welcome you to, reach out. One of the reasons we're based in Winter Park is a little north of Orlando, but there's a lot of really good stuff that very few people really hear about and know. So yeah, our plans are just stay put. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great run, and we've got a fabulous team here, but also distributed. So it's just easy to recruit talent and have them be effective from anywhere you are.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks. And that's exactly right. The other half, the other story, other part of the story for Orlando, you're part of that other part of the story. And thank you for sharing that story and the story so far. And I'm sure the story is far from over. So I wish you all the best for the future and look forward to hearing about your successes as we go forward. Thanks again, Taj. This was wonderful. I really appreciate you making some time for us, sir.
Absolutely, Rajiv. Well, thanks very much, and have a great rest of the week.
Thanks. You too.